Marcus Thompson pressed his face against the huge glass window of Space Station Alpha 7, his dark eyes wide with wonder. At 15, this was his first time seeing Earth from space, and the sight took his breath away. The blue planet hung like a perfect jewel against the black velvet of space, wrapped in swirls of white clouds. "This is amazing," he whispered to himself, pulling out his phone to take pictures. The device was special, designed to work in space and given to him by his father. His father, who was somewhere in the diplomatic section of the station, probably in another important meeting. The space station's main hall buzzed with activity. Humans in business suits walked alongside tall, blue-skinned aliens in floating robes. Small, round robots zipped between people's feet, carrying messages and packages. The air smelled clean and slightly metallic, different from Earth. Marcus walked slowly, trying to take everything in. His visitor's badge hung properly from his jacket pocket, just like his father had shown him. He had memorized all the rules: stay in public areas, keep your badge visible, don't run, don't touch anything without permission. Near a large holographic map, something caught his eye. A small alien child, probably from the Centauri system based on its golden scales, was playing with what looked like a floating ball of light. Marcus stopped to watch, fascinated by how the ball changed colors as it danced through the air. "Hey, you! Stop right there!" A sharp voice called out. Marcus turned around, surprised. 2 station security officers were walking quickly toward him. They wore the standard gray uniforms of Alpha 7 security, with glowing blue strips down the sides. "Is something wrong?" Marcus asked, keeping his voice polite and calm, just like his father had taught him. "What are you doing here?" the taller officer demanded. His name tag read Officer Wilson. "This is a restricted area." Marcus frowned, confused. "No, sir, this is the public viewing area. See?" He pointed to the large sign above them that clearly said Public Viewing Gallery. The second officer, shorter but broader, moved to block Marcus's path to the left. "Let's see some ID." "What's in your pockets?" "My visitor's badge is right here," Marcus said, reaching for his pocket. "Don't move!" Officer Wilson snapped, his hand moving to his stun baton. "Keep your hands where we can see them." People were starting to stare. The alien child with the light ball had disappeared. Marcus felt his heart beating faster, but he remembered his father's words: always stay calm, no matter what. Panic only makes things worse. "Officers, there's been a mistake," Marcus said quietly. "My badge is in my jacket pocket. I have permission to be here." "My father is sure, kid." "Everyone's father is someone important," the shorter officer interrupted with a smirk. He grabbed Marcus's arm roughly. "You're coming with us for questioning." "But I haven't done anything wrong," Marcus protested, trying to keep his voice steady even as fear crept in. "Please just check my badge," Officer Wilson cut him off. "We've had reports of suspicious activity in this sector. You've been watching people and taking pictures. That's enough for us to bring you in." Marcus noticed more people gathering around, some holding up their phones to record what was happening. He saw a few concerned faces, but nobody stepped forward to help. The alien visitors looked especially uncomfortable, moving away from the scene. "I'm just visiting the station," Marcus tried one more time. "This is all a misunderstanding, save it for the holding cell," the shorter officer growled, pulling out his restraints. "Put your hands behind your back." Marcus felt the cold metal close around his wrists. His face burned with shame and anger, but he didn't resist. His father had been very clear about that too: never give them a reason. Stay dignified, stay calm, and truth will win out. As they led him away from the viewing gallery, Marcus caught one last glimpse of Earth through the window. Somewhere in the diplomatic section of this very station, his father was working to make humanity part of something bigger than Earth. But right here, right now, old prejudices were alive and well, even among the stars. The officers marched him through the crowded hallways toward the security section. Marcus walked with his head held high, even as tears threatened to fall. He knew his father would find out soon. And then these officers would learn exactly how big a mistake they had made. Part 2. The confusion. The security office of Space Station Alpha 7 looked exactly like Marcus had expected, cold, gray, and unwelcoming. The walls glowed with a faint blue light from the energy shields that protected the station's vital areas. Several screens displayed camera feeds from different parts of the station, showing the endless flow of humans and aliens going about their business. Officer Wilson pushed Marcus into a small room with a metal table bolted to the floor. "Sit down," he ordered, finally removing the restraints. The chair was uncomfortable, probably designed that way on purpose. "Can I please show you my visitor's badge now?" Marcus asked, keeping his voice steady despite his growing frustration. His wrists hurt where the restraints had been too tight. The shorter officer, whose name tag read Officer Brooks, laughed. "Oh, now you want to show us your badge? Should have thought about that before causing trouble in the diplomatic sector." "I wasn't causing trouble," Marcus said. "I was just looking at Earth through the window and taking pictures." "That's allowed in the public viewing area?" "It says so on all the signs." A third officer entered the room, this one wearing the stripes of a senior security officer. Her name tag identified her as Officer Roberts. She carried a tablet and looked at Marcus with suspicious eyes. "We've had reports of someone casing the diplomatic section," Officer Roberts said, her voice clipped and professional. "Taking pictures of security checkpoints, watching staff movements." "Care to explain that?" Marcus took a deep breath. "I was taking pictures of Earth and the alien visitors because I've never been to a space station before. My father brought me here today." "If you'll just scan my visitor's badge, what's your father's name?" Officer Wilson interrupted, clearly not believing him. "Admiral James Thompson," Marcus answered. "He's Earth's representative to the Sure he is," Officer Brooks snorted. "And my father's the president of Mars." Officer Roberts held up her hand, silencing her colleague. "Let's start with the basics. Name and age?" "Marcus Thompson, 15 years old," Marcus replied. He tried to reach for his badge again, but Officer Wilson stepped forward threateningly. "Keep your hands on the table," Wilson barked. The room's air recyclers hummed quietly in the background. Through the small window in the door, Marcus could see other officers gathering, whispering and pointing at him. His face felt hot with embarrassment. "Look," Marcus said, trying one more time. "This is all a big mistake. My visitor's badge has all my information. It's linked to my father's diplomatic credentials. Just scan it, please." Officer Roberts looked at her tablet again. "We'll get to that. First, explain why you were watching the security checkpoints." "I wasn't," Marcus protested. "I was watching that alien child with the floating light ball. It was fascinating. I've never seen anything like it before." "Convenient excuse," Officer Brooks muttered. "They all have excuses." A young junior officer stuck his head into the room. "Ma'am, the chief wants an update on the situation." "Tell him we're questioning a suspicious individual found surveilling the diplomatic sector," Officer Roberts replied. "Possible security threat." Marcus felt tears of frustration building in his eyes, but he blinked them away. He wouldn't cry. He wouldn't give them the satisfaction. His father would find out soon, and then. The junior officer hesitated at the door. Should I run his credentials first?" "Standard protocol says we know what we're doing," Officer Wilson snapped. "This isn't your concern." Marcus watched as the junior officer backed away, looking uncertain. Through the window, he could see more people gathering. Some wore the uniforms of diplomatic staff. News was spreading. "One more time," Officer Roberts said, leaning over the table. "Why were you really in the diplomatic sector?" Before Marcus could answer, a new voice came from the hallway. A voice that made the young junior officer's face turn pale. I believe I can answer that question. The voice was calm, controlled, and carried absolute authority. Marcus felt relief wash over him as he recognized it. His father had arrived. The officers didn't know it yet, but their entire world was about to change. Part 3. The father's arrival. Admiral James Thompson stood at the head of the conference table in Diplomatic Chamber 1, his crisp white uniform adorned with medals that reflected the soft light. Before him sat representatives from 3 of the most powerful alien civilizations in the galaxy, the crystalline beings from Rigel, the energy forms from Vega, and the ancient lizard-like species from Proxima Centauri. As Earth's representative, Admiral Thompson was saying, I can assure you that humanity is ready to join the Galactic Council. We have made great strides. And his wrist computer buzzed silently. A red light blinked. Priority alert. As a veteran diplomat, Thompson didn't even pause in his speech. Years of training had taught him to handle multiple crises at once. While continuing his presentation, he discreetly glanced at the message scrolling across his wrist display. Security alert. Marcus Thompson detained diplomatic sector. The Admiral's heart skipped a beat, but his face remained perfectly calm. 20 years of military service and 15 years of diplomatic work had taught him how to hide his emotions. He finished his sentence about Earth's technological advances without missing a word. The Rigel representative, a being that looked like a walking diamond, raised what might have been a hand. Light sparkled through its crystalline form as it spoke in the universal translator. Admiral, you speak of humanity's progress. Yet we hear disturbing reports about continued prejudice among your people. Thompson's wrist computer buzzed again. Camera footage appeared, his son, being led away in restraints. His son, who had done nothing wrong. His son, who had all the proper credentials. An excellent point, Thompson said smoothly. He straightened his already perfect posture. In fact, I believe we have an opportunity to address this very issue. Would the council representatives be willing to take a brief recess? I have a situation that requires my attention, one that may prove relevant to our discussion. The vegan representative, a swirling cloud of blue energy contained in a special environmental field, pulsed with interest. This is unusual, Admiral. Our time is valuable. I understand completely, Thompson replied. His wrist computer showed him the security office location. Deck 7, Section C. What I'm about to handle will demonstrate exactly how Earth deals with issues of justice and equality in the modern age. The Proximan elder, scales shimmering with age and wisdom, tilted his head. Perhaps we should observe then. If you have no objections? None whatsoever, Thompson said, allowing himself a small smile. In fact, I welcome it. This may be the perfect illustration of how far humanity has come and how far we still need to go. The Admiral's mind raced as they walked through the station's corridors. The alien representatives floated, walked, and glided behind him, their curiosity evident. Station personnel pressed themselves against walls, staring at the unusual procession. Thompson checked the security footage again. He saw his son sitting in the interrogation room, head held high despite his obvious distress. Pride mixed with anger in the Admiral's chest, but he kept his breathing steady. This would require a delicate touch. Admiral, the Rigel representative chimed, its crystalline voice tinkling like bells, your heart rate has increased, yet your external demeanor remains calm. Most interesting. Emotional control is vital in diplomacy, Thompson replied. As is the proper application of authority. They reached the security section's main entrance. Through the transparent walls, Thompson could see the commotion inside. Officers were rushing about, finally realizing something was wrong. The junior officer who had first scanned Marcus's ID was trying to tell his superiors something, but they weren't listening. Before we enter, Thompson said to the alien representatives, I want you to understand something. What you're about to witness is not just about my son. It's about humanity's capacity to face its flaws and correct them. It's about justice. It's about change. The Admiral straightened his uniform one final time. Behind him, 3 of the most powerful beings in the galaxy waited with anticipation. Before him, through the door, were officers who had just made the biggest mistake of their careers. Now, Admiral Thompson said quietly, "Let me show you how Earth handles matters of principle." Part 4. The Revelation. The security office of Space Station Alpha 7 buzzed with nervous energy. Officer Roberts stood at her desk, reviewing the report she planned to file about their suspicious detainee. Behind her, Officer Wilson paced back and forth while Officer Brooks watched Marcus through the interrogation room's window. "Something isn't right," the young junior officer, Thomas Reed, said for the 3rd time. He clutched his tablet tight against his chest. "We really should scan his credentials. Protocol says enough." Officer Wilson snapped. "You've been here 2 weeks? We know how to handle suspicious individuals." Thomas bit his lip, looking at his tablet screen again. The visitor badge scanning app was already open, waiting to be used. He'd seen the boy try to show his badge several times. It would take just seconds to check. "Fine," Officer Roberts sighed, more to stop Thomas's nervous fidgeting than anything else. "Scan the badge if it'll make you feel better. Then maybe you'll let us do our jobs." Thomas rushed to the interrogation room, his hands shaking slightly. Marcus looked up as he entered, hope flickering in his eyes. "Can I show you my badge now?" Marcus asked quietly. Thomas nodded, holding up his tablet. "Yes, please." "Slowly remove your visitor's badge." Marcus carefully took out his badge, and Thomas scanned it with his tablet. The device beeped, and information began flooding the screen. Thomas's face went pale. His hands started trembling harder. "Oh no," he whispered. "Oh no, no, no." He ran back out to the main office area, nearly tripping over his own feet. "Officers, you need to see this right now." "What is it?" Officer Roberts asked, annoyed at the interruption. Thomas turned his tablet around, showing them the screen. "The badge scan. Look who he is. Look who his father is." The color drained from Officer Roberts's face as she read the information. Visitor, Marcus Thompson, age 15, status, authorized security level, diplomatic family, highest clearance, Guardian, Admiral James THOMPSO and POSITION, Earth's chief representative to the Galactic COUNCIL. Officer Brooks looked over her shoulder and cursed under his breath. Officer Wilson stopped pacing and stood frozen in place. That's impossible," Wilson stammered. "He's just a kid who was acting suspicious." "Acting suspicious by taking pictures in a public viewing area?" Thomas asked, finding his voice. "The same viewing area where we have signs encouraging visitors to take pictures?" The security office door slid open with a soft hiss. A station administrator rushed in, his face covered in sweat. "Officers, we have a situation." "Admiral Thompson is right here," a calm voice said from the doorway. Every head turned. Admiral Thompson stood in the entrance, his white uniform pristine, his presence filling the room. Behind him floated 3 alien representatives, their forms casting strange shadows on the walls. Officer Roberts dropped her tablet. It clattered on the floor in the sudden silence. She started, but no other words came out. "Chief Security Officer Roberts," Admiral Thompson said, his voice perfectly controlled. "I believe you have my son in custody." "Sir, there's been a mistake," Officer Wilson blurted out. "We didn't know. The Rigel representative chimed in, its crystalline form glittering with what seemed like curiosity. "But did not the young one try to show you his credentials multiple times?" Officer Brooks took a step back, bumping into a desk. The vegan representative's energy form pulsed with what might have been disapproval, while the Proximant Elder's scales had darkened, a sign of displeasure in their species. "The young officer there," Admiral Thompson pointed to Thomas, "seems to be the only one who followed proper protocol." "What's your name, son?" Thomas Reed, sir, Thomas managed to say, standing straighter. Officer Reed, Admiral Thompson nodded. Thank you for doing your duty. Now, would someone like to explain to our honored representatives from the Galactic Council why my son was arrested without cause and denied his basic rights? The silence in the room was deafening. Through the interrogation room window, Marcus watched as his father took complete control of the situation without raising his voice once. The lesson was about to begin. Part 5. The confrontation. Admiral Thompson walked into the interrogation room where Marcus sat, his footsteps echoing in the tense silence. The 3 alien representatives followed, their presence making the small room feel even more crowded. Officers Roberts, Wilson, and Brooks stood against the wall, while Thomas Reed remained by the door. Are you all right, son? Thompson asked, his voice gentle but firm. Marcus nodded, sitting up straighter. Yes, sir. I followed your instructions. Stayed calm, didn't resist. A slight smile crossed the Admiral's face. Well done. He turned to face the officers, his expression becoming serious again. Now let's review what happened here today. Officer Roberts stepped forward, her voice shaking slightly. Admiral, sir, we can explain. Yes, Thompson interrupted smoothly, you will explain. But first, Officer Reed, please play back the security footage from the public viewing area. Time index 1400 hours. Thomas quickly pulled up the footage on the room's main screen. They all watched as Marcus stood at the window, taking pictures of Earth and the passing aliens. The footage clearly showed his visitor's badge visible in his jacket pocket. I see a young man following all posted regulations, the Proximan elder observed, his scaled head tilting. Where is the crime? There isn't one, Thompson said. He turned to Officer Wilson. Yet you approached him with hostile intent. Why? Wilson swallowed hard. We had reports of suspicious activity in the sector. Show me these reports, Thompson demanded. Officer Brooks shifted uncomfortably. They were verbal reports, sir. From concerned citizens. The vegan representative's energy form pulsed with a deep blue color. Fascinating. On our world, verbal reports must be documented immediately. Is this not standard procedure here? It is, Thomas spoke up from his position by the door. Section 47B of Station Security Protocols requires all civilian reports to be logged and timestamped. Admiral Thompson nodded approvingly at the young officer. Correct. So either these reports don't exist, or you failed to follow basic protocol. Which is it? The silence from the senior officers was answer enough. Let's continue, Thompson said, his voice becoming harder. My son attempted to show you his credentials multiple times. You not only refused to check them but physically restrained him when he tried to reach for his badge. Explain that decision. We thought he might be reaching for a weapon, Officer Roberts said weakly. The Rigel representative's crystalline form sparkled with what seemed like disbelief. A weapon? In a section of the station with 15 different types of weapon scanners? Indeed, Thompson agreed. A section where no one human or alien can enter without passing through multiple security checkpoints. The same checkpoints my son cleared with his diplomatic family credentials less than an hour before you arrested him. Officer Wilson stared at the floor. Officer Brooks had backed himself into a corner. Officer Roberts looked like she wanted to disappear. Do you know what today is? Thompson asked suddenly. The officers looked confused by the question. Today, Thompson continued, Earth's representatives were making our final presentation to join the Galactic Council. Today, we were trying to prove that humanity has moved beyond its primitive prejudices. That we're ready to be part of a larger community of species. He gestured to the alien representatives. These honored delegates came here to judge our progress. Instead, they witnessed something very different, didn't they? The Proximan Elder's scales had turned a deep shade of blue, a sign of deep thought in their species. We witnessed truth, Admiral Thompson. both the problem and, perhaps, the solution. The young officer, the vegan representative, pulsed, indicating Thomas, showed that proper procedures exist. He attempted to follow them despite pressure from his superiors. And your son, the Rigel representative, chimed in, demonstrated remarkable restraint and dignity. As did you, Admiral? Thompson nodded slowly. So perhaps this incident, unfortunate as it is, can serve a greater purpose. He turned back to the 3 officers who had arrested Marcus. You have a choice to make. Right here. Right now. In front of these witnesses. The air in the room felt heavy with anticipation. The lesson wasn't over, it was just beginning. Part 6. The lesson. Admiral Thompson stood at the room's main computer console, his fingers moving swiftly across the holographic keyboard. Behind him, the 3 senior officers watched nervously as their actions from the past hour appeared on multiple screens around the room. Let's examine this incident step by step, Thompson said, his voice calm but firm. Computer, play security camera feed A7, timestamp 14:5. The main screen showed Marcus at the viewing window, clearly displaying his visitor's badge. Another screen showed the security checkpoint he'd passed through earlier, complete with successful weapons scan and credential verification. Now, Thompson continued, show me the station's security protocols regarding suspicious persons. The computer displayed a list of procedures. Thomas Reed, still standing by the door, straightened up as he read them. Section 12, Paragraph 3, Thomas recited. All security personnel must verify credentials before any detention action. No exceptions. The Rigel representative's crystalline form pulsed with light. A wise protocol. It prevents misunderstandings. And yet, Thompson said, turning to face Officers Roberts, Wilson, and Brooks, you chose to ignore it. Why? Officer Roberts stepped forward, her face pale but determined. Sir, we made assumptions. Wrong ones? We saw what we expected to see, not what was actually there. Honesty, the Proximan elder noted, scales shifting color. The first step toward change. Thompson nodded. Officer Brooks, when my son tried to show you his badge, you said, and I quote, sure kid, everyone's father is someone important. Would you care to explain that attitude? Brooks looked at the floor, shame evident on his face. No, sir. There's no explanation that would make it right. The vegan representative's energy form swirled with interest. You humans have a saying, judge not, lest ye be judged. We have observed this principle across many civilizations. Indeed, Thompson agreed. He pulled up more footage, showing Marcus being led away in restraints. Officer Wilson, you used force on a minor without provocation. The station's AI logs show no aggressive movements from my son. How do you justify this? Wilson's voice was barely audible. I can't, sir. We were wrong. Completely wrong. Thompson turned to the alien representatives. Honored delegates, what you've witnessed today is not humanity at its best. But perhaps you've also seen something important about how we handle our mistakes. The Proximan elder moved forward, ancient scales gleaming. We see a father who chose education over anger. A leader who uses authority to teach, not punish. And a young human, the Rigel representative chimed in, indicating Marcus, who showed more maturity than those who arrested him. Marcus sat straighter in his chair, pride visible in his eyes despite the ordeal he'd been through. Officers, Thompson said, you have 2 choices. First option, official reprimands, possible demotion, and disciplinary action. He paused, letting that sink in. Second option, you acknowledge your mistakes publicly, undergo comprehensive bias training, and help implement new procedures to prevent this from happening again. The 3 officers exchanged looks. Officer Roberts spoke first. Sir, I choose the second option. And I apologize to your son. We should have listened. Should have followed protocol. Wilson and Brooks nodded in agreement, both mumbling their apologies. "Officer Reed," Thompson called out. The young officer stepped forward nervously. "Your actions today, while delayed, showed integrity. You'll be part of the team developing these new procedures." "Thank you, sir," Thomas said, standing taller. The vegan representative pulsed with approval. "From error comes wisdom, if one is willing to learn." "Marcus," Thompson turned to his son. "What do you think? Should we accept their choice to learn and improve?" Marcus looked at the officers who had arrested him. His voice was steady when he spoke. "Everyone deserves a chance to do better, right, Dad?" "That's what you always say." Thompson smiled, pride evident in his expression. "That's exactly right." He turned back to the officers. "Your training begins tomorrow. And remember, the next time you see someone who looks suspicious, ask yourself, are you seeing what's really there, or just what you expect to see?" The lesson had been delivered. Now it was time to ensure it stuck. Part 7. The change. 1 month after the incident, Space Station Alpha 7 looked different. Not in its physical appearance, the huge windows still showed the magnificent view of Earth, and the corridors still buzzed with humans and aliens going about their business. The change was in how things worked. Marcus stood in the same public viewing area where he'd been arrested, but this time he wasn't alone. Officer Thomas Reed stood beside him, teaching a group of new security officers about the station's updated protocols. "And this," Thomas said, pointing to a new holographic sign, "is one of our public photography zones. We encourage visitors to take pictures here. Remember, someone's enthusiasm for space isn't suspicious, it's exactly what we want to see." The new officers nodded, taking notes on their tablets. Among them were Officers Roberts, Wilson, and Brooks, now wearing training badges as they went through their recertification program. "Officer Reed," Roberts raised her hand, "can you show us again how the new ID verification system works?" Thomas smiled and pulled out his security scanner. "The new system is actually based on what I tried to do that day. It's simple: scan first, ask questions later." At a nearby desk, a young alien child was getting her visitor's badge. The security officer helping her had patches on his uniform showing he'd completed the new cultural sensitivity training. Marcus watched as the officer explained everything clearly and respectfully, making sure the child and her parents understood all their rights and privileges on the station. "Marcus," a familiar voice called. Admiral Thompson walked up, accompanied by the 3 alien representatives who had witnessed the incident a month ago. "How are the changes looking from your perspective?" "Better, Dad," Marcus replied. "Much better. Did you see the new training programs they're implementing?" The Rigel representative's crystalline form sparkled with approval. "We have been monitoring the progress. Most impressive how quickly humans can adapt when they choose to." Officer Brooks stepped forward, his demeanor much changed from a month ago. "Admiral, sir. We've just finished reviewing the latest statistics. Complaint rates are down 78% since implementing the new protocols. And response satisfaction is up 91%, Wilson added, holding up his tablet to show the data. "Turns out when we treat people with respect first, everything works better." The vegan representative's energy form pulsed with a gentle blue light. "Your species continues to fascinate us. You learn not just from success, but from failure as well." "Sometimes especially from failure," Thompson agreed. He turned to Officer Roberts, who was helping a confused tourist with directions. "How's the new mentorship program working out?" "Incredibly well, sir," she replied. "Every new officer is paired with someone from a different background than their own. It helps break down preconceptions before they can become problems." The Proximan Elders' scales shimmered with interest. "We have added this program to our recommendations for other space stations. The Galactic Council is most impressed." Marcus watched as a group of school children entered the viewing area, their eyes wide with wonder. The security officers smiled and waved, making them feel welcome instead of suspicious. One officer even offered to take a group picture for them with Earth in the background. "You know, Dad," Marcus said quietly, "something good really did come from what happened." Thompson put a hand on his son's shoulder. "Because you handled it with dignity, son. You gave us the opportunity to learn instead of just react." Thomas called the training group back together. "Next, we'll review the Universal Rights Charter that's now posted at every security checkpoint. Remember, our job isn't just to protect the station, it's to protect everyone's right to enjoy it safely." Above them, the station's AI announced arrival times for various ships in multiple languages. Each announcement ended with the station's new motto, "Welcome to Alpha 7, where diversity makes us stronger." Officer Roberts smiled as she watched another family successfully pass through security. "We were so focused on looking for threats that we forgot to see the wonder." Not anymore. The change wasn't just in procedures or protocols. It was in hearts and minds. And it had started with one boy who stayed calm in the face of prejudice, and one father who chose to teach instead of punish. Space Station Alpha 7 was becoming what it was always meant to be, a shining example of humanity's better nature. Part 8. The resolution. 3 months after the incident, the main conference hall of Space Station Alpha 7 was packed with representatives from across the galaxy. The massive chamber sparkled with beings of all forms, crystalline, energy, biological, and even a few that defied traditional classification. Admiral Thompson stood at the podium, Marcus seated proudly in the front row. Behind them, Earth shone through the giant window, a beautiful blue backdrop to this historic moment. "Distinguished members of the Galactic Council," Thompson began, his voice carrying clearly through the translator systems, 3 months ago, my son was wrongfully detained on this very station. Today, I'm not here to talk about that incident, but about what came after. The screen behind him displayed statistics and images, security officers training together, new welcome centers for visitors, updated protocols being implemented across multiple space stations. What could have been just another sad example of prejudice became something more, Thompson continued. It became a catalyst for change. Officer Thomas Reed, now promoted to Chief of Training, stepped forward with a tablet. "Since implementing the new Universal Rights Protocols, we've seen a 95% decrease in wrongful detentions across all species. More importantly, visitor satisfaction has reached an all-time high." The Rigel representative who had witnessed the original incident chimed in, light refracting beautifully through its crystalline form. "We have observed remarkable progress. The Thompson Protocols, as they are now known, have been adopted by 17 other space stations." Marcus watched as Officer Roberts, now heading the Cultural Understanding Division, demonstrated the new visitor processing system. Gone were the suspicious glares and hostile assumptions. Instead, every visitor was greeted with respect and dignity. "But perhaps most telling," Thompson said, gesturing to a group of former officers, "is how those involved in the original incident chose to help lead these changes." Officer Brooks stepped forward, looking much different from the angry man of 3 months ago. "We had a choice: resist change or be part of it. We chose to learn, to grow, and to help others avoid our mistakes." The Proximan Elder, scales now a proud gold color, addressed the council. "When we first witnessed the incident, we had doubts about humanity's readiness to join our community. Now, we see them turning a moment of prejudice into a movement of progress." The vegan representative's energy form pulsed with approval. "They have shown us that true strength lies not in never making mistakes, but in how one learns from them." Marcus stood up when his father beckoned him to the podium. Together, they unveiled the new Galactic Standard for Security and Rights, a comprehensive document that would be used across all member stations. "My son's dignity in the face of prejudice," Thompson said, his hand on Marcus's shoulder, "and his willingness to forgive those who wronged him, showed us all a better way forward. Sometimes the youngest among us can be our greatest teachers." The council chamber erupted in their various forms of applause, crystalline chimes, energy pulses, and traditional clapping, all mixing together in a celebration of progress. "The vote is unanimous," the council president announced. their multifaceted form glowing with satisfaction. Earth is hereby granted full membership in the Galactic Council, with special recognition for their contributions to universal rights and security reform. As the celebration continued, Marcus looked out at Earth through the window. The same view that had gotten him in trouble 3 months ago now represented something new, hope for a better future. "Dad," he said quietly, "do you think it will last?" "The changes, I mean?" Admiral Thompson smiled. "Change is like space travel, son. The hard part isn't getting started, it's maintaining the right course. But look around you. Everyone here is committed to keeping us on track." Outside the window, a new ship was arriving at the station. On its side was the new universal rights symbol, a design that incorporated elements from all member species. As the passengers disembarked, they were greeted not with suspicion, but with welcome. Space Station Alpha 7 had become more than just a waypoint between Earth and the stars. It had become a symbol of humanity's potential to learn, to grow, and to build a better future for all species. And it had started with one boy who stayed calm, one father who chose to teach, and a group of people who decided to change.